around the front page came much, much later, because that usually happens around 6 or 7, where you feel under a lot of pressure to make sure you get the right image.
We were asking a question yesterday as to whether our listeners thought that all newspapers should almost club together and decide to print some of these cartoons from Charlie Hebdo in their own newspapers. Now, that has happened in Spain. It's happened in Germany with some papers. Not a single British newspaper has done that. Why is that?
Well, I'm happy to reveal to you and to your listeners, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but, I'm having conversations with other very senior journalists across Fleet Street about what we might do. It's none of that has actually materialised and come to anything specific yet, but, I share your interest in whether or not Britain might put together a concerted response. As it happens, I don't know of a concerted response at the moment, and I think in a post-Leveson environment, post-hacking and all the rest of it, it's going to be difficult to get a coordinated response from the British press. Having said that, I think there might well be a place for that. So we're going to look into that over the next couple of days, and it's something I've taken a close interest in.
I don't know if you've read David Aronovich's column in the Times today. It's headline, "Decency towards Muslims, laced with a certain fear, has made Britain reluctant to satirise their religion openly." Do you think he's got a point?
I think he has got a point. I mean, David's a brilliant columnist. There's a very... Today on Twitter, I got absolutely... I've never been retweeted more. It's very weird. Lots and lots of people came back to me and said, a nice front page, mate, like that very much. But almost as many people came back and said, well, you're a pathetic coward for not printing either a Charlie Hebdo picture yourself or a picture of the Prophet Muhammad. And I just say to you, Ian, to your listeners, and to those people who come back on Twitter and say that, look, if you're going to be an editor, which is something I take incredibly seriously and I attach huge pride in, you've got to make a huge number of decisions. All of those decisions have consequences. And I've got to weigh up the consequences of upholding principles that I came into journalism for and that the Independent believes in, with the practicality of the consequences for our staff. So, it's true that no British newspaper decided to publish the Charlie Hebdo pictures, and no British newspaper decided to publish images of Prophet Muhammad. I think, my judgment last night, and I stand by it today, is that it would have been wrong to unilaterally publish, be the only British newspaper that did publish pictures of Prophet Muhammad. And I think, moreover, it was possible to make a really strong and defiant statement without having to recourse to that. So, my thinking, for those of your listeners who haven't seen the front page, was that I wanted our cartoonist, Dave Brown, who I think is the best in the business. The attack yesterday by these sick Islamist thugs was an attack on cartoons, cartoonists, and on satire, and therefore I wanted our cartoonists and our cartoon culture and our satire or satirical culture to be given a voice on the front page. So it wasn't necessary, I think, to publish a picture of the Prophet Muhammad to make a defiant response, but it is the case that, as David Aronovich says, we are to some extent living in fear of reprisal.
And you look at the cartoons that have appeared in all newspapers today, and the cartoonists have really sort of risen to the occasion, haven't they? Because there must have been an awful lot of pressure yesterday on them. It can't have been a normal day for anyone drawing a political cartoon yesterday, and yet there's some amazing cartoons throughout the whole of the British press today.
Absolutely wonderful. And, it's so moving. I saw on the BBC news earlier today sort of a montage of some of these cartoons. It's incredibly, incredibly moving. The idea that not only were these images kind of aesthetically and intellectually and morally striking, but the idea that these images were composed by this kind of fraternity, this kind of brotherhood and sisterhood of cartoonists who were composing these images in a state of shock and sadness for their brethren. I find it incredibly moving, frankly, the idea that there is this sort of unspoken and sort of largely unseen culture of people who give their life to this kind of vital and really important political commentary. And the difference between the sort of political commentary that you and I go in for, Ian, is that we are, dare I say it to Ian Dale, we're sort of loudmouths. We have a legacy. We attach our faces to the words that we publish. The thing about cartoonists is not many people know what Dave Brown looks like. Not many people know what Peter Brooks of the Times looks like. Another great man who I revere. And I love the idea that today it's not just individual cartoonists, but this brotherhood and sisterhood, this fraternity of cartoonists who together came out and said, we will not be silenced. And it's our duty to make sure that they're not silenced.
And just very briefly, how does it work? When you have a newspaper cartoonist, not necessarily on days like yesterday, but generally, do they offer you sort of 3 or 4 for you to choose from, or they just send you one and that's it?
Dave is so good, and we know him so well that he does a draft of one every day. So he does a draft, sends it in, and unless he's, as long as he's not said something that we think is outrageous and unacceptable, we tend to tell him to go ahead.
Has that ever happened?
Yesterday, never, ever. Not
and you wouldn't tell me if it had, would you?
Of course I wouldn't. But yesterday, I don't know if you're interested, just very, very quickly, your listeners may want to know that yesterday he fired the cartoon as usual. It was the wrong shape because it was destined for page 3, and we looked at it and we thought, you know what, that is the image. That is what we want to be defined by. We want that to go around the world. We want that symbol of defiance, and I took the decision as the editor that I wanted that on the front. So he brilliantly, being the genius that he is, he redrafted it, and we got it in about 9:45, put it on the page with not much time to go, and I dare say I'm pretty proud of it.
Just in time for the Sky newspaper review. Thank you very much, Amal Rajan, editor of The Independent, and thanks to Dave Brown, because it is a fantastic cartoon. Right, just time to squeeze one more call in before the end of the hour. Let's go to Roy in Huddersfield. Hello, Roy.
Yeah, hello, good evening, Ian. First time I've spoken to you.
Well, welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Right, I just heard a guy ring in and say that he didn't like, the proliferation of CCTV cameras and so on. And I don't know, they said he was threatened. Well, I've never heard of anybody being apprehended, and prosecuted, and then found to be innocent through CCTV evidence. It catches the criminal and traces them. There is so many stuff now on TV, police camera action. There was caught red-handed on BBC. Dominic, what's his name, has such things. Unfortunately, it's the way that things are going, and if it catches criminals, I say, yeah, good on it.
Okay. Roy, thank you very much indeed for rounding off our discussion there. Well, we will be talking about this a little bit more on the LBC Parliament Hour between 7 and 8. Joining me tonight, former Cabinet Minister Peter Hain, Greg Barker, the former Energy and Climate Change Minister, and Eleanor Mills, Executive Editor of the Sunday Times. Your emails and texts are already coming in about our subject for the next hour. Mark says Cameron is running scared of Farage. Why does Mark say that? Because David Cameron has said that he won't take part in TV debates unless the Greens are included. And why does he come out with that today? Well, it's because Ofcom, the broadcasting regulator, has said that they do not regard the Green Party as a major party. So in the run-up to the election, only UKIP, the Lib Dems, the Tories and Labour will get equal broadcast time. We are going to be talking live and exclusively with Natalie Bennett, the leader of the Green Party, in the studio. And I want to get your calls as well. Are the Greens a major party?
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 6 o'clock, police in France searching for two brothers wanted over yesterday's terror attack in Paris are focusing on an area northeast of the city. 12 people were killed when the offices of satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo were targeted. LBC's Simon Conway reports from the French capital.
The search for the gunmen has now moved on to a very large forest northeast of Paris. Anti-terror police have also converged on a village after Said and Sheriff Kouachi were reportedly spotted at a nearby petrol station this morning. Authorities have also confirmed they're treating a fatal shooting of a policewoman in southern Paris this morning as a terror attack. It's not known if it's being linked to yesterday's mass killing. Tonight, Parisians continue to take flowers and other tributes to the office of Charlie Hebdo on what's been a day of mourning across France. Simon Conway, LBC in Paris.
Here, the head of MI5 says the spy agency is offering its French counterparts its full support. Andrew Parker says the attack is a terrible reminder of the intentions of those who wish us harm. David Cameron says the country is on alert.
When it comes to security, we must use every part of vigilance and security that we have. When it comes to a challenge to our values, the best way to stand up for our values is to repeat our belief in them, in the freedom of speech, in the rule of law, in democracy, in tolerance.
Security's been tightened at UK borders following yesterday's terror attack. LBC's Charlotte Wright reports from the Eurostar terminal at London's St Pancras station.
Here at St Pancras, British Transport Police say they've upped their patrols and increased the number of armed police at the station. Meanwhile, Eurostar passengers are getting their passports checked more often than usual, and staff here have been told to be on alert. But London Mayor Boris Johnson says there's no need for concern.
As far as we know, there is no immediate threat to London that we can identify. There's no read across to our city from the terrible events in Paris, though obviously we can never be complacent and we must be vigilant.
Unlike in France, our terror level hasn't been raised to critical, and Downing Street says the increased security here and across the country is just a precautionary measure at this stage. Charlotte Wright, LBC, St Pancras.
Oldham Athletic has confirmed it won't now be signing convicted rapist Ched Evans. The club's chief executive, Neil Joy, has issued this statement.
It was always the case that we were prepared to withstand the barrage of abuse that is evident within the country and on social media. We deplore and condemn the vile and abusive threats, some including death threats, which have been made to our fans, sponsors and staff, whilst this process has been in the public domain.
This afternoon, Ched Evans apologised for the effects of his attack in North Wales in 2011, but the 26-year-old continues to maintain his innocence. The Foreign Office has confirmed a British teenager has been found dead on a ski trip to France. 18-year-old Kieran Flux from the Isle of Wight went missing following a night out in Val d'Isère. And the Prime Minister is reported to have said he won't be taking part in any TV debate ahead of the general election unless the Green Party are also included. It's after the media regulator Ofcom said the Greens won't be classed as a major party ahead of May's election, and the Green Party leader Natalie Bennett will join Ian on LBC in a few moments' time. LBC weather, very breezy in London and the southeast this evening. Rain spreading to all areas overnight, a low of 6 Celsius. Wet across the rest of the UK. There's a severe weather warning for wind in force for Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland tonight. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Rupert Bhatia.
I'm Natalie Bailey in the LBC Travel Centre. In East London in Wapping, the highway is slow eastbound from Tower Bridge to Dello Street following an accident from earlier. There are still long delays northbound going over Tower Bridge as well. And staying in London in Park Royal on the North Circular Road, an accident southbound at Abbey Road is blocking 2 lanes and causing queues back to the Harrow Road underpass. In Surrey, on the M25 clockwise, traffic slow from junctions 13 to 16, Staines to the M40. And in Essex in Epping Forest, there are long delays on the A121 westbound between the Wake Arms roundabout and the M25 at junction 26 due to some temporary traffic lights outside of the cemetery. In East Sussex, the A21 is closed between Sedlescombe and Watlington due to flooding. And better news for the M1 in West Yorkshire. There was an accident southbound between junctions 41 and 40, Cargate to Ossett. That's now been cleared, although traffic is still busy back towards junction 43 at the turn-off for the M621. And on the trains, there are delays on Southern, First Great Western and South West trains between Southampton Central and Portsmouth Harbour, and Southern trains have 20-minute delays going into and out of London Bridge. Keeping you moving. Your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel
with Go-To Meeting, where there's always a seat for you.
The PPI mis-selling saga has been going on for years. If you're concerned that you've left it too late to claim your PPI back, think again. Direct Redress have claimed back millions of pounds for clients that were victims of the PPI scandal, even if you don't have any agreement numbers or original paperwork. To find out more, text the word PPI to 87121. That's PPI to 87121. Direct Redress. Experts in financial claims.
This is LBC, leading Britain's conversation with Ian Dale at Drive. Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
Hello, very good evening. Welcome to the show. Come on, David Cameron. The broadcasters have invited us. The public expect it. Just say yes and stop making excuses. Not my words, the words of Nick Clegg, the Deputy Prime Minister. He's just tweeted that. Why does he say it? Because David Cameron says he won't take part in election TV debates unless, wait for it, the Green Party are invited to take part too. However, Ofcom, as the plot thickens, have said that the Green Party won't be considered a main political party in the run-up to the election, so they won't get equal time, therefore they won't take part in the debates. You couldn't make it up, could you? 6 minutes past 6. If you go to lbc.co.uk right now, you will be able to see our next interview live, because Natalie Bennett, the Green Party leader, joins us live and exclusively in the studio to react to this. It's actually quite a complicated story in a way, and you'll have to bear with me for a second, because Ofcom, they're the people that regulate us, essentially, the radio and TV companies. They've published a consultation document on political parties that they consider to be major political parties ahead of the election. And their recommendation is to include UKIP as a major party, but not the Greens. Well, before we talk to Natalie Bennett, let's have a word with Martin Campbell, former Ofcom Chief Advisor and former Chairman of the Broadcast Journalism Training Council, who joins us now. Martin, good afternoon.
Hi, Ian.
Just explain why Ofcom have to come to a decision as to who is considered to be a major party.
Yeah, the reason that they come to a decision, you're right that it is a bit complicated and a bit haywire. What happens is that essentially it's Ofcom's job to work out initially who is able to take party election broadcasts during the run-up to the election. And those that have party election broadcasts are the major parties, and so they decide who the major parties are. And it hasn't been too difficult up until now. Now they've decided that they should go to consultation on what the major parties, simply because clearly the political landscape is changing. And so the people who are granted the status, if you like, of major parties will get party election broadcasts. They will be lumped in with election coverage that has to... I know you used the word equal earlier on. It's not equal. It's parties that have to be given due weight by TV stations and radio stations.
So even if the Greens were considered a major party, they wouldn't be entitled to the same time as, say, the Conservatives or Labour. Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily the same time in coverage, but they would be eligible for party election broadcasts. Now, the leadership debate is slightly aside of that, but what everyone has taken as granted is that the leadership debate should include those same major parties, if that makes sense. TV stations don't have an obligation to run these leaders' debates. They're just things that they come to amongst themselves. But the interesting thing, of course, is whether... it would be breaking the Ofcom rules for the debate to go ahead without David Cameron. And so it's a little bit like a Whitehall farce.
But when, just very briefly, when you look at the Greens' case here, they have an MP, they have MEPs, they control a council, they're going to be standing in the majority of parliamentary seats. I think their case would be stronger if they committed to stand in all of them. But if you were advising Ofcom now, what would your advice be?
If I was advising Ofcom now, I would say that, and what they've given, of course, is only an initial view. This does go out to consultation, but I honestly think the consultation will make very little difference. I think the Greens will lobby Ofcom, and I think that they will therefore demonstrate that they're able to demonstrate lobbying activity. It won't change the actual criteria. This has to be quite a high threshold. And I think one of the phrases that Ofcom has always used in this is that their list of major parties is always kept under review because what they want to do is to reflect political developments. And it's UKIP that is probably at the forefront of political development, more so than the Green Party.
Martin, thank you very much. That's Martin Campbell, former Ofcom Chief Advisor. Well, Natalie Bennett was sitting there patiently listening to Martin give his words of wisdom. Natalie, in some ways, I would say all your Christmases have come at once, which might be a strange thing for me to say, but you want to present yourselves as sort of the outsider party. Well, this gives you the opportunity to do that.
Well, I think one of the things it does make clear, interestingly, is how much UKIP has fitted comfortably within the establishment fold. That's very clear. But I think, more broadly, there really is, both in terms of the Ofcom ruling and the leader debates, a huge issue here for British democracy in terms of representing the range of views. Things like, we are the only party saying that we should bring the railways back into public hands, have zero tuition fees, have a minimum wage that's a living wage, and they're very strongly representing public views. We're the only people people saying that. And also, if you look at the polling, the fact that there was a YouGov poll out just before Christmas that 22% of the under 25s are planning to vote Green. Of a poll of students, 24% support, the second largest group of support among students. What we're doing is we're really seeing Ofcom, the broadcasters, stuck in the past when British politics has really moved on to 5 or 6 party politics.
So you're essentially saying UKIP are an establishment party and you are the only anti-establishment party now for people to vote for?
Exactly. And I think what we're seeing here is, I don't think there's a plot or a conspiracy, but I think there's a general view of what politics looks and sounds like, and presenting views, outside the mainstream, even views that represent, the majority of those of the British public. People find it a bit hard to grasp, and they're not really grasping just how fast what's known as the Green surge is going in terms of, we've got 1,000 new members joining us a week. We've got polling. We had our first 10% double-figure poll just before Christmas. Things are changing really fast. And when you look at the Ofcom draft ruling that came out today, they're talking about, well, let's look at 2010. 2010 was a very, very, very long time ago.
Now, I would say that your case would be strengthened if you committed to stand in every one of the constituencies, certainly I know you don't control the Green Party in Scotland, but let's just say England and Wales for the moment. But you haven't done that so far. You say you're going to have more candidates than at the last election. How many was that?
Well, we had a bit over 50% last time. We've committed to more than 75%.
Why can't you commit to stand in every constituency?
Well, this is where we get to the fact of us being something of the outsiders and non-establishment party. You have to stump up a £500 deposit for every candidate that stands. Now, if you've got, multi-millionaire hedge fund donors who, just dig down behind the sofa and find $1 million or $2 million, that's not a lot of money. For us, it's a lot of money. Now, as I've said, we've committed to a minimum of 75% of seats. We're looking to be more than that, and you look at the pace at which we're growing, maybe we'll get a lot more than that, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, you've got all these extra new members. I'm sure there are one or two of those that are quite well heeled. This is a genuinely well-meant bit of advice.
Yeah.
If you committed to standing in every single seat by the time this consultation finishes, I can't see how Ofcom could refuse you that status.
Well, I think one of the other things that we're looking at, we're seeing growing very fast, is crowdfunding. Through the crowdfunder website, lots of our, in fact, a Lambeth Green Party just, I think today, hit their initial funding target within a day on a months-long fundraising program. So, we're going out to the people and saying, can you give us a $5 or a $10 or a $20? And that, can add up. But we've really got to see, before we commit to a huge financial outlay, because, of course, we've also got to think about the fact that we still have a deeply unfair first-past-the-post electoral system. And, to get more MPs, we've got to focus our efforts as well as spread them wide.
Now, what about the debates? It's quite interesting that David Cameron has said today that he won't debate unless you're part of it. I must admit, I laughed out loud when I saw that story breaking on the Sky ticker. Ed Miliband and Nigel Farage, and indeed now Nick Clegg, we had the tweet from him just now, they are all ridiculing David Cameron. What's your response?
Well, I think, obviously Mr Cameron has his own political interests, but I think, he is also the Prime Minister. He has a responsibility to politics, and he is off-the-record remarks that have been attributed to him on the BBC story about this, saying, that the debate would be unbalanced if UKIP's there and we're not. And that's a reflection of his personal political interests, but it's also a reflection of the reality. And let's give him credit as Prime Minister for being concerned about democracy and being concerned about the direction of British democracy.
I've never heard you say anything nice about David Cameron in the past, but you clearly believe that he genuinely believes, or do you think it's a ruse to escape going into the debates himself?
Well, I'm prepared to give him credit. He's Prime Minister. He must at this point be thinking about his legacy, and I'll give him credit on what the balance is. I'm sure he's the only person who knows between personal interest and prime ministerial interest. No, but I do just want to say I have given him credit before, particularly on gay marriage.
You did. That is true. Do you think that, sitting here now 4 months ahead of the election, do you think you will be part of one of the debates if there are more than one?
Well, I think it's not clear that there will be any debates at all. And, I'm not sure that that's any kind of disaster. If you look at the structure, this is a presidential-style debate that we basically imported from America. And there were reports last time of people going into polling booths and saying, why isn't Nick Clegg or Gordon Brown on my ballot paper? It doesn't fit very well. It doesn't fit very well with the much more fluid, much more regional, much more local politics that we've got now. And it doesn't fit very well with parliamentary democracy. So it's not like we're not going to see the issues debated. We're not going to see extensive election coverage. I've already already seen even quite a few political reporters feeling that they might have had enough of the election on about day 3 of 2015.
I said that on day 1. Just finally, before we go to the news and travel, some people are accusing the Green Party of effectively being a pressure group rather than a political party in the sense of the other political parties. Is that an unfair criticism?
I think that's really quite ridiculous. I'd invite them. In fact, I suggest that they should, if they want to maintain that view, they should sit down and commit to reading our policies for a sustainable society. It comes to a stack, a stack about about 600 pages, lots of words that Green Party members have democratically put together. Policies on education, policies on defence, policies on prisons, policies on everything you can think of. We have a complete political program there. We've got a whole philosophy, an anti-austerity philosophy, a philosophy that says society should work for the common good, not just for the few. And we've really got to change the way our society works, and the program for that is set out in those policies. So just
quickly going back to David Cameron, have you ever met him privately? Has he ever talked to you about this?
No, we haven't had a discussion. There's no.
Have you ever met him?
No, not. There's no smoke-filled rooms here, I can assure everybody.
Bang goes my conspiracy theory. Natalie, stay with us. If you want to continue watching us, lbc.co.uk. We're going to be asking you this question. I'd like to get your views. Do you consider the Greens to be a major political party? Should they be given the same status as UKIP, as the Lib Dems? Bear in mind that they're outpolling the Lib Dems in many YouGov polls at the moment, Labour and the Conservatives. Do you think that they deserve the same status? Would you like to see Natalie Bennett included in one of the leaders' debates? And what do you make of David Cameron saying that he won't take part in leaders' debates unless Natalie Bennett's there too? 0345 6060 973. This is LBC at 17 minutes past 6. Rupert Bhatia has the news headlines.
Police in France searching for 2 brothers wanted over yesterday's terror attack in Paris are focusing on an area northeast of the city. Security's been increased at ports and airports in the UK. Armed police are patrolling the Eurostar terminal at London's St Pancras International Station. And the leader of the Green Party, Natalie Bennett, has told Ian that stopping the party from taking part in the TV debates ahead of the general election poses a huge issue for British democracy. This is LBC.
I'm Natalie Bailey in the LBC Travel Centre. In the east of London, the highway in Wapping is still very slow eastbound from Lower Thames Street to Dello Street following an accident from earlier. That's still causing long queues northbound over Tower Bridge. And staying in London in Park Royal on the North Circular Road, an accident southbound at Abbey Road is blocking 2 lanes and causing queues back to the Harrow Road underpass. The M4 in London slow eastbound from Junction 4B at the M25 to Junction 3 at Hayes after an accident. And in Essex in Epping Forest, there are long queues on the A121 westbound from the Wake Arms roundabout to the M25 at Junction 26, where there are some temporary traffic lights outside of the cemetery. In Kent at Cuxton, the A228 Rochester Road is partly blocked between Bush Road and Kent Road with an accident. That means queues in both directions. And the M1 in West Yorkshire has reopened southbound between Junction 41 at Cargate and Junction 40 at Ossett after an accident there. There are still delays back to Junction 43 at the M621 though, and Southern, First Great Western and South West trains have delays between Southampton Central and Portsmouth Harbour. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel.
With GoTo Meeting. Don't let wet weather put the brakes on your commute.
118434. 118434. 118434.
What are you doing?
Shh, trying to remember a number. 118434.
Do you want to borrow my pen?
Brilliant, thanks. 118434.
Now, whenever you need a number, there's only one number you need to remember. 118434. The handy number for handy numbers.
Calls cost 76 pence plus £1.53 per minute from a BT landline. Other networks vary and mobiles cost considerably more.
Oliver speaking.
Winston Wolfe. I understand your house is flooded and uninhabitable.
Yes?
Your landlord wants me to sort you out.
But it wasn't my fault.
Which means that, as you agreed with your landlord, you're entitled to alternative accommodation, and Direct Line will pick up the bill.
That's great.
Like it never happened, Oliver.
Guaranteed to beat any quote for the same cover. Can your landlord insurance do that? Search Direct Line Landlord Insurance. New customers only. Policy limits and qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
Every day, more and more people decide to let go of all the hassle that comes with selling their car. Whether they're selling an Audi or an Aston, a Hummer or Honda, a Porsche or you get the picture. They know there's an easier way to sell in just 3 simple steps. So whatever car you're thinking of selling, why not enter your reg number now at webuyanycar.com, the UK's favourite car buying service.
With over 1 million online reviews posted every minute, catching every negative review about your business and stopping them all from spreading is like trying to put out a fire with a water pistol. Unless you're us. Reputation.com will track and report every single online review from the sites that matter so you can respond quickly and easily. To find out more about how we can help manage, improve and protect your brand's image online, visit Reputation.com.
The PPI mis-selling saga has been going on for years. If you're concerned that you've left it too late to claim your PPI back, think again. Direct Redress have claimed back millions of pounds for clients that were victims of the PPI scandal, even if you don't have any agreement numbers or original paperwork. To find out more, text the word PPI to 87121. That's PPI to 87121. Direct Redress. Experts in financial claims.
Ian Dale at Drive on LBC.
22 minutes past 6 here on LBC. Natalie Bennett, the leader of the Green Party, is with me in the studio. She will be listening to a couple of your calls and maybe responding to them also. Let's go. Let me just tell you why she's here if you just tuned in. She's here because Ofcom have launched a consultation document today which recommends that the Green Party isn't classed as a major party. Now, there are lots of ramifications for that. We've just been into them. Basically, Natalie's not very pleased, as you can probably imagine. If you want to watch us, you can do so at lbc.co.uk. Nikki's in Chiswick. Hello, Nikki.
Hello.
Hello. What would you like to say?
Hello.
Nikki, are you there? No, we'll leave Nikki for the moment and see if we can get back to her. John is in Crayford. Hello, John.
Hi, Ian. Yeah, hi, Natalie. I just wanted to say that if we're a genuine democracy, why is Ofcom making decisions that the people should make? I didn't actually elect Ofcom. They seem to be taking the decision that should be made by the people, for the people. It's just bizarre. The other thing I thought was a bit strange was that David Cameron is prepared to debate with the Greens, but he didn't want to debate with UKIP. And I'm actually a UKIP supporter. I believe in democracy.
What do you make of that, then? The fact that he hasn't said he'd debate UKIP in the past, but he's happy to debate with the Greens. What do you make of that?
What do I make of it?
Yeah.
I just think it's hypocrisy. Democracy is about allowing a fair... what I find strange is that Greens actually, they outperformed the Lib Dems at the mayoral elections, they outperformed the Lib Dems at the Euro elections, but they're not given a chance to have their voices heard at the debates. It's just a bit bizarre. I think they should be allowed to, say what a lot of people, it's just basic democracy. It's just strange. I can't just understand why.
Natalie, do you think that you get a fair crack of the whip in the media?
I don't think so. I think there's a real perception of what politics looks like, what the debate's about, and that's a very narrow sense of what that is. Before I was talking about, we want to bring the railways back into public hands, and lots of journalists say to me, that's a really radical position. Yet actually there's a survey that shows that a majority of Tory voters want to bring the railways back into public hands. There's a very narrow perception of that politics in the future will look like the past, and yet it very clearly doesn't. And I think thank you very much, John, for what you said. And that reflects. I was reflecting on another UKIP supporter who down in Stroud, he'd given me a very hard time at a public meeting over immigration, but he came up to afterwards and said he wanted to shake my hand because he disagreed with every single thing I said, but he thought people had the right to hear it. And
that's kind of how I feel after we've done a phone in.
There's probably some similarities there.
I saw someone tweeting earlier saying, why isn't Natalie Bennett doing a regular phone on LBC? But you do. You go on with Duncan Bart's very regularly, don't you?
I do. It's not quite, the regular weekly thing, and I would, of course, be absolutely delighted at any opportunity to do that. But, I have a rule with the broadcasters, anywhere, anytime, any place. If I can physically make an interview, I'll do it.
Well, we're very grateful that you've come here today. Nikki's in Chiswick. Hello, Nikki.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I was just saying that initially when I actually heard you make the comments about David Cameron's statement, I myself laughed and I thought, he's probably just trying to get out the debate. But actually, having listened to Natalie, I can completely agree with David Cameron's stand. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that UKIP will be considered as a major party and then the Green Party left out, considering that UKIP have no MP at the moment. I just feel that, UKIP have done a great job in terms of actually getting the message out there, and especially with, Nigel Farage coming on the LBC quite regularly, going on Sky News, so he's kind of done a great job in terms of getting his message and his face out there. However, that does not necessarily mean that the Green Party should be left out in this case, and I completely disagree with it. If they were to go ahead with a TV debate, I would just probably not even watch it at all. I think it's unfair. And
you say that you're not a Green voter, Nikki. Could you be persuaded?
To be honest with you, I don't know enough about the Green Party's policies, and I'm probably one of those people that would have just initially just thought, okay, Green Party environmental, and that's it. But obviously, having listened to Natalie today, it sounds like they have a much broader range of policies, but that needs to be communicated to the electorate, and it's not that clear at the moment, from my perspective anyway. I'm not so sure whether I'll be persuaded for this particular election. However, I just think it's completely ridiculous that this ruling has been made. Okay. It's either all the parties should be included or they shouldn't go ahead with the debate.
All right, Nikki, thank you very much indeed. Natalie, what do you make of the fact that Ed Miliband and indeed Nigel Farage are both ridiculing David Cameron for saying this? I mean, you might, particularly from Ed Miliband, expect a little bit of support, sort of fraternity among the left and all that.
Well, I think people debate exactly where Ed Miliband fits on the political spectrum precisely. But I think, what we're seeing there is the kind of political point scoring, the kind of game playing that really goes down very poorly with the electorate. The first Monday back that we had the election campaign really getting underway, instead of people positively presenting and saying this is what we want to achieve, we want to restructure society, we want to make rich individuals and multinational companies pay their way, which is what the Green Party would say, pay their fair share of taxes and pay their workers properly. Instead of having debates about issues like that, we're having point scoring and arguing about your numbers and my numbers and whose numbers are more accurate. And that really isn't serving British democracy well. And I think we need to talk about the structure of this election, but we also really need to get down to the content, what we're actually debating, the policies.
If some rich person came along and said, Natalie Bennett, you need to stand in another 100 seats, I'm going to give you £50,000 to enable you to do that, would you accept it?
We have some pretty strong rules about which kind of rich people we'd accept the money from, but certainly that's something we'd be prepared to look at if they meet our ethical guidelines.
OK, well, let's go to Elizabeth.
And yes, that is an invitation.
Thought it might be. Let's go to Elizabeth in West Hampstead. Hello, Elizabeth.
Actually, to me, I think this coming debates, if they are going to go ahead, should just be between Mr Cameron and Mr Miliband. The other parties would just be irrelevant. Otherwise, you'd have the whole stage full up with all different parties. Why the Greens are not the DUP from Northern Ireland, the other...
Well, because they're not a national party.
Well, I mean, they've got just as much right to speak as anybody else. The Scots Nats... it would become ridiculous.
Well, the proposal at the moment, Elizabeth, is for there to be 3 debates, one with David Cameron and Ed Miliband, one with Miliband and Clegg as well as the Prime Minister, and then the other one will be between the 5 party leaders. Isn't that a sensible way of doing it, have 3 debates?
Well, no, I think this has become too presidential already. I think it should be between Mr Cameron and Mr Miliband.
OK, thank you very much. Natalie, do you accept that if there are 3 debates, you would only be included in one of them, or do you think that there is a case for there to be 3 debates of all 5 leaders?
Well, I think that there's certainly a case for, I've suggested that 5-5-2 would be a reasonable format, because any one-off event is very one-off in its nature and slightly random, whereas if you have one debate with the 5 people and then they come back 2 weeks later with the same 5 people, there's a chance for a real dialogue and development of the debate. But I think, it's Elizabeth, it's interesting that you say that, this would become more presidential, but actually just focusing on 2 people, the leaders of what presumably will be the 2 largest parties, that's very much making it presidential. And of course, that's not the system we have. We have a parliamentary election, and people, will be going into the polling booth and they won't be voting for David Cameron, Ed Miliband. They won't be voting for me except in one particular seat. And it's really important that we hear a variety of views. And I think that's one of the things Nicola Sturgeon and Leanne Wood and I got together and said, if you look at the SNP, Plaid and our view, all anti-austerity views, there's lots of things we disagree on. We're running against each other. But at the same time, we're also very much saying, there's views that need to be heard. And I think that's what we really need is a plurality of views, not a narrowing down to what really, when you look at Miliband and Cameron, you can just about get a cigarette between them in terms of actual policies. The rhetoric might sound a little bit different, but the policies are, there's about a cigarette paper between them.
Well, we won't go into that one. I just do want to ask you something completely different there about Nigel Farage's comments today on LBC about multiculturalism being at least in part to blame for the terror attacks in France, and saying there was a fifth column in Britain and France that leads to these terror attacks. What do you make of language like that?
I think it's absolutely disgraceful and very damaging. And what we need to do is reach out to people, come together, all get together and say, we believe in free speech and democracy. We're a very inclusive society. We will include everyone who accepts free speech and democracy. We come back to the old, I accept your right to say anything, even if I violently, very strongly disagree with it. Rhetorically speaking. And those sort of comments are the kind of thing that have really dragged our politics. And sadly, one of the other reasons why we should be in the debates, we're really the only party that stood up against that kind of rhetoric from UKIP and said that, we have to stop this race to the bottom on immigration rhetoric. We have to celebrate free movement of people in the EU. We have to actually celebrate the contribution that migrants have made to our society and accept the rights of people who should be able to be here, to live here.
Have you met Nigel Farage? Have you debated with him?
I've shared a sofa with Mr. Farage on a late night television programme. Yes.
And how did you find the experience?
Well, I'm not sure either of us enjoyed it very much, and I've also been on him with him on Question Time, and I did, I think, get to see him make up an entire tax policy with a joint team of Simon Hughes and I tackling him on Question Time.
Well, maybe we should get the both of you on this programme at some point in the future. I think that might be highly entertaining.
Well, I said any time, any place, anywhere. Okay. You heard me say it.
We will hold you to that, and we will certainly be giving you a platform here, Natalie Bennett. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We will be taking more of your calls on this after the news and travel. 0345 6060 973. Do you think Ofcom are being grossly unfair to the Green Party, or do you just think they're not big enough to be included this time around? I'm Ian Dale at Drive. LBC News Time, it's 6:32. News headlines with Rupert Bhatia.
9 people have been arrested in France in connection with yesterday's terror attack in Paris. The 2 gunmen are still on the loose this evening. LBC's Simon Conway reports from Paris.
The manhunt for the men continues well over 24 hours after the shootings. Anti-terror police are now searching a forest northeast of Paris after reported sightings at a petrol station and a village nearby. Tonight, there are more freedom of expression vigils in central Paris. The French national anthem has just played, and the message here, we are not afraid.
In the UK, security's been tightened at ports and airports. Armed police are patrolling the Eurostar terminal at St Pancras International Station. The leader of the Green Party, Natalie Bennett, has praised David Cameron for threatening not to take part in leaders' debates ahead of the general election if the Greens aren't invited. Ms Bennett told Ian the Prime Minister is acting on behalf of British politics. And Oldham Athletics say that death threats made to fans, sponsors and staff have forced the club to pull out of the deal to sign convicted rapist Ched Evans. LBC weather. Very breezy in London and the southeast this evening. Rain spreading to all areas overnight, a low of 6 Celsius. Wet across the rest of the UK. There is a severe weather warning for wind in force in Northern Ireland, Northern England and Scotland tonight. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Rupert Bhatia.
I'm Natalie Bailey in the LBC Travel Centre. In London in Park Royal on the North Circular Road, there are southbound delays from Brentfield Road down towards Abbey Road, where 2 lanes are blocked with an accident. And the M4 in London is slow eastbound from junction 4B at the M25 towards junction 3 at Hayes after an accident earlier there. Also on the M4 in Bridgend, lanes closed westbound between junction 37 at Pyle and junction 38 at Margam. That's because of an accident that's causing a few queues. And in Kent at Cuxton, the A228 Rochester Road is partly blocked between Bush Road and Kent Road. An accident there is causing queues in both directions. In West Yorkshire on the M1, traffic is very slow southbound from junction 42 at Lofthouse down towards junction 40 at Ossett, following an accident that's been cleared. And on the trains, there are delays still for Southern, First Great Western and South West trains between Southampton Central and Portsmouth Harbour, and that's because of an investigation from earlier. Keeping you moving, your next travel update is in 15 minutes.
LBC Travel
with Go To Meeting, where there's always a seat for you.
Oliver speaking.
Winston Wolfe. I understand your house is flooded and uninhabitable.
Yes?
Your landlord wants me to sort you out.
But it wasn't my fault.
Which means that, as you agreed with your landlord, you're entitled to alternative accommodation, and Direct Line will pick up the bill.
That's great.
Like it never happened, Oliver.
Guaranteed to beat any quote for the same cover. Can your landlord insurance do that? Search Direct Line Landlord Insurance. New customers only. Policy limits and qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
If you're thinking of selling your car, why not let go of all the hassle that comes with it? Including those random people who turn up to test drive it with no intention of buying, and those people who come with checks that bounce way off into the distance. They know who they are. Let go of all that and sell your car quickly and easily in just 3 simple steps. 1, 2, 3 and you've sold your car in a 20-minute appointment. Just enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com, the UK's favourite car buying service.
118434. 118434.
What are you doing?
Trying to remember a number.
Do you want to borrow my pen?
118434.
Now there's only one number to remember. 118434. The handy number for handy numbers.
Calls cost 76 pence plus £1.53 per minute from a BT landline. Other networks vary and mobiles cost considerably more.
Is it just me, or are there more germs in this carriage than passengers? Seriously, a packed doctor's waiting room is a healthier place to